Hey everybody, before I get started, I just want to mention a couple of ways that you can engage with me on a more personal level. I have a few avenues set up and I keep focusing on one, and I figured why don't I make a short little video talking about all of them real quick before we get into these episodes. So first thing, Patreon. There's a link in the episode description, in every episode description to the Patreon, as well as a video on the feed called Major Announcement that has all the details of what each tier offers and how much they cost. I implore you to check that out. I offer a lot of cool shit for my patrons. Second thing, the Discord channel. There's also a Discord link in the episode description and in every episode description. I have multiple channels set up there for each show that I'm covering, and it's a great way to just engage with me. I have a channel set up for MMA talk as well. I'm a big MMA fan, so if you're an MMA fan, you can check that out as well. There's a link to the Discord in the episode description. And then lastly, the Facebook and Twitter. Social media. Follow me on there. I post news on there. When I say news, I mean like, hey, I'm stopping covering this show. Hey, I'm starting covering this show. Let me know what you think about this. I do live watches of things on Facebook where like I'll check in and say I'm watching so-and-so show, and then I'll like live comment while I'm watching it, and that'll be cool if maybe you watch that show too and you want to watch along with me, or you're watching it later and you will see my thoughts, which are usually pretty entertaining because I'm usually pretty high when I'm writing them. So check out all those links in each episode description, and let's talk about this episode. Peace.
One mic, one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. One mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about Season 1, Episode 4 of Apple TV's Silo, entitled Truth. Pretty obvious title here. Overtly, I think it's very obviously the word on the back of the badge, which we talked about last week when that was revealed. But more accurately, I think it speaks to the truth of what we learned about these people, their past, who they are, why they do the things that they do, the decisions that they make in this episode and that they made up to this point, probably the decisions that we're going to see them make later. We learned this through flashbacks about Juliet. We learn about the people in Juliet's life via these flashbacks, Martha, her father, etc. So we get to a lot of truth from the past, but I think we also get to learn a little bit more truth about what's going on right now, present day in the silo. Purely speculation for me, that is, but I will get to that before this video is over. But I do have thoughts on what some of the things that I think we saw and how that I think can lead us in the direction of kind of sort of guessing what might be going on. Like I said, I have theories, but I'll get to that before the end of the video. This episode, it cuts back and forth, like I mentioned, between flashbacks meant to inform us on how and why Juliet ended up in mechanical, and then present day, focusing on her and Marn's desire to get to the truth about what happened with Holston, what happened with Ruth, and what happened with George. Obviously, for Juliet specifically, it's mainly about finding out what happened with George, and for Marn, it's about finding out what happened to Mayor Johns and why. And of course, obviously, I think he also has some investment in why Holston made the decisions that he made as well. And we'll start with Marn's. He's convinced that Ruth was poisoned, and that he himself was the actual target. And for starters, I watched the Ruth death scene again, because if you guys remember, last week, it very much came off as a suicide to me. There was so much stuff asserted in this episode that I just did not recall seeing or feeling in episode 3. And like I said, I felt like it came off like a suicide. And granted, a suicide, I don't think makes sense for Ruth in that moment, but Ruth seemed shook to me, like she knew something bad was gonna happen. So I watched that scene again after I watched this episode, and I feel the exact same way. We don't even see them drink any wine. The scene starts with Ruth signing a document that I assumed then and still assume now was the official kind of like naming of Juliet as sheriff. And then she seems sick in that moment, like there's something wrong with her. And she looks at Marnes very lovingly, longingly, like, I want to look at your face for the last time. And then she says, grab some wine while I take a piss. And then she dies in the bathroom. That did not come off like what Marnes said it was. And then Marnes in this episode is like, she was poisoned and someone was trying to get me. And I'm just like, I didn't see that last week. So I felt vindicated in watching it again and finding that it is in fact not on the screen. But that does make me wonder. Is Marnes lying? Is Marnes just plainly wrong? And this was a suicide? Or is everything to be taken at face value and the connecting pieces just aren't there? I think it's likely the last option, which is the worst of the three, unfortunately, but I hope it's not. But if we take everything at face value, that means that Marnes truly believes that Johns was poisoned and that she actually was, and that's the story that we are sticking with. And I want to say I'm fine with that if that's the case. But I don't feel like that I feel like that just doesn't jive with Ruth's death scene. And it really sticks with me it will really stick with me in a negative way if the show tells me something happened in that scene that I saw and none of that shit was on the fucking screen. Like telling me that Martin said, like the wine was poisoned and all the, like, none of that's on the screen. So I just don't want them to tell me that something happened there that wasn't there. Nothing about that scene said murder by poison. Everything about it said suicide. Now, is there a world where we get to murder by poison and I'm satisfied? Of course. But like, I just want to point out that this episode proceeded as if murder by poison was definitively what happened. And that was not on the screen in episode 3. That's all I'm saying. That's it. Moving on, though. And by the way, that's not a criticism. That's just me telling y'all that's what I saw. Like, again, there's plenty of time to connect what I saw to what they're saying is happening or to change what actually happened, whatever. Not a criticism by any means. Just pointing out, murder by poison, not on the screen, baby. Moving on. I don't know the rules of the silo well enough to know if this is a problem, but I did make note of Marne's very strong reaction to John's death in front of Common and in front of Tim Robbins. I do know their names. Tim Robbins is Bernard and Common Sims? Rob Sims, I believe. Anyway, I just wondered if his strong reaction to Martin's death could clue in Judicial about an unsanctioned relationship. Just something I'm just thinking about because I remember they made a big deal out of George and Juliet's unsanctioned relationship. So it just made me wonder if that could come to roost, like his reaction to her death. And we also learned in this scene that Bernard, who was the head of IT, is now the acting mayor. And I was wondering last week about what his role was. Didn't matter last week because now I know because now it's a completely different role and I do know what it is. So don't have to worry about that. We then later learn that Judge Meadows is willing to sign off on this Billings guy becoming the new sheriff as long as acting Mayor Bernard and I don't know if assistant deputy is Marne's title. I think it is. But as long as Bernard and Marnes sign off on it, Judge Meadows is willing to make this Billings guy the new sheriff. We all smell a conspiracy here, right? Like, come on. I don't know to what end, but the short-term goal here is very clearly for this Billings guy to become sheriff. And all of these deaths and these various things that are happening are meant to facilitate that, right? Like, so after Holston goes to clean, the first obstruction to this was Holston wanting Juliet to replace him. How much you want to bet Billings' name appears in George's file? Like, because I feel like knowing Billings would likely replace him and that Billings is likely involved in whatever is going on is probably why he requested Juliet to replace him so that Billings wouldn't be able to step into that role and do whatever it is that Holston discovered he's probably trying to do, or for him to be able to assist whoever the fuck else in doing whatever it is that they intend on doing. The next obstruction to the make Billings sheriff conspiracy was Ruth's unwillingness to go along with it. So she was taken off the board and then replaced by an acting mayor, Bernard, who is willing to go along with it. And then the final easy cog should have been getting Marnes to sign off on it, which would have worked, but they were probably unaware of his love for Ruth and thus underestimated his passion about finding out the truth on what's happened to her. So again, if Ruth was taken off of the board, that's something that Marnes is going to want to find out. So when Juliet's you scratch my back, I scratch yours proposal is set in front of Marnes, of course he's going to take that deal. So now the easy cog that should have been Marnes signing off on allowing Billings to become sheriff is now Marnes going, I don't know about that yet, because he just made a deal with Juliet to help Juliet find out what happened with George, and Juliet's going to help him find out what happened with Ruth. So he has a strong motivation that they don't even know about. So that's several things that should have gone easily to help make Billings become mayor that didn't, which lead me to believe that there's some sort of conspiracy in place. I said mayor, I meant sheriff, to make Billings sheriff. And this, oh wait, no. Oh, I forgot one other thing. So when Marnes unexpectedly tells Common's, oh, I'm gonna come in my house and come in your house and help myself to a beer, ass. When he tells Common that he's not gonna, hold on, wait a minute. Oh, yeah, that he's not gonna sign off on the on making Billings mayor. They try to take Marnes off the board too at the end of the episode, and the episode played up the idea that this could be one of the many people that's out to get Marnes, the people that he went after throughout the course of this episode. But I think this person had to be working on behalf of Judicial, right? Because we knew about Marnes' shotgun. When Marnes went for it, it wasn't there. And I feel like a random person with beef wouldn't know where Marnes' shotgun is. Speaking of people with random beef, what the fuck is wrong with this Sandy motherfucker that used to work for Holston but is giving Juliet all of this fucking lip on her first day on the job? Like, Holston would leave the door open. Bitch, you see Holston here? Like, close the fucking door before I fire you. Get the fuck out of here. Like who talks to their new boss that way? Like, just because you don't like that Juliet is your new boss does not make Juliet any less your new boss. Like, I'd have fired the fuck out of Sandy during that very first conversation just off the strength of, like, you gotta be a stupid motherfucker to talk to your new boss that way. And if you that stupid, I ain't got no place for you. Get the fuck out of here. She's like, I have no idea what you people eat down there. Well, bitch, you better find out because you're fired. Now take your stupid ass down to mechanical. Hope you find a job down there, and then you gonna learn what we eat. Get the fuck out. Like, what the fuck? Like, what's this? I don't know. Sandy just rubbed me all the wrong way. Pause. Sandy, like, I don't know what the fuck that was, but man. Another thing I liked about this episode, though, was the constant delay in Juliet looking into Holston's vent. It was like narrative edging, dog. Like, oh, I'm so close to coming, and then Juliet gets distracted and we don't get to see what's in the vent. And then in the meantime, Marnes, believing that Ruth was killed by someone going after him, goes after anyone who might have had a vendetta against him in the past. And I don't know if the people he went after will come back around, so I don't think I need to talk about what happened here. But I think the main takeaway is that we're supposed to understand that Marnes is so destroyed by her death, her being Ruth, and the alcohol that he's drinking in response to it, that he's completely unreliable and unpredictable. And they do this fake out where they make it look like Marnes is gonna kill himself, but in actuality, apparently he must have just come back from the past in the time machine because he's hanging up a punching bag that he only could have gotten from Joe Louis, because they definitely don't make punching bags like that. They ain't made punching bags like that in about 3,000 years. So I don't know where he got that punching bag, but I did like they do this little fake out where it looked like Marnes is gonna kill himself, but he's just hanging up a punching bag. And I mentioned earlier the scene where Common comes into Marnes' house and he's all, hey, I'm here at your house. I'm gonna help myself to a beer without asking. But what I did like about that scene is that I feel like Will Patton is playing Marnes as like this guy who's bumbling and aloof, just to get people to not quite take him seriously enough. But then he's actually quite cunning, and I kind of like that about Marnes. Like, I feel like he looks like he's hit rock bottom, and he has. He's definitely drinking, but I still think he's strong enough in the game that we're gonna see Marnes kind of like really step up. And I think part of the reason he's gonna be able to step up is because no one takes him seriously enough. And I bet in the next episode he's gonna talk to Juliet about suspicions he has regarding Judicial's motivations and plans, just based off of the strength of the attack that happens at the end. But that is, of course, assuming he is still alive, because we don't know, because the last time we see him, somebody we don't know has a shotgun trained right on him. As the episode comes to a close, Marnes overhears Juliet and Martha talking on the walkie-talkies. They clearly don't know how walkie-talkies work. And they're plotting, but the most important thing that we are to take away from this is that it looks like Martha has figured out something involving the camcorder. I am now back on the page of it being a camcorder, because I said last week, I'm like, I don't know if maybe that's not a camcorder. It's a camcorder. And she wants to talk to Juliet about whatever it is that she's found. And the episode ends with Juliet discovering, I finally get to blow my load. Juliet discovers the noise in the vent. was the same setup that she showed Holston that George had, with the whole hidden line and something important tied to the end of it. And she pulls up whatever is tied to the line in Holston's vent, and it ends up being George's file. So moving on to the flashback scenes, we're going to talk about these briefly. We learned that both Juliet's mom and brother died in the past, and that this has put a strain on her relationship with her father, who was never around, leaving her to cook her own dinner while she looked like Lindsay Lohan in The Parent Trap. And, she wanted to go fix things in mechanical, proving that she could do it by fixing a chair that her father said couldn't be fixed. And after forging a note from him saying that it was okay for her to be in mechanical, we see that Juliet meets Martha for the first time at a very, very young age. They've known each other for a very long time. I don't think that's important in this episode, but I think it's just meant to, again, we're talking about world building. Juliet pointed out that Martha hasn't left that shop in like 20 years, and now I think we all have the understanding that Juliet really knows that because they've known each other for 20 years, and Martha's been down there that whole time. And Martha figures out the forgery thanks to a misspelling, but Juliet's father, I keep wanting to call him Jorah, agrees to let her stay anyway. Essentially, we're meant to take away from these flashback scenes that Juliet wasn't solely motivated to go to mechanical because she likes to fix things. It also allowed her to not think about the deaths of her mother and her brother, which is some pretty sad and upsetting shit. So, solid episode. Well, no, it's better than solid. It was a really good episode. It was just, again, more world building, more information, more questions. It wasn't the exhilarating fucking episode 3, but you're not gonna have that every week. It was interesting. It was informative. Again, I'm looking forward to next week. Totally loving this show, but I want to close out with a couple of quick thoughts. First of which is a question. Who do you guys think that Lucas guy is gonna be? The one who's been sitting in that little cafeteria area looking at the screen, the big screen for outside. He talks to Juliet at the end. I wonder what his significance is gonna be. If you've read the books and you already know, please don't comment. And then this one lady tells young Jules that Martha has a list of things that will be brought to her directly if found. This is very clearly important and tied to whatever's keeping Martha down there this whole time. And I'm really interested in Martha's backstory. Why is she down there? Why is she stayed? Why is she listening to this radio? What is on this list of things? Why is she needed? Why is it so important? Really interested in the Martha stuff. So, that's all I got for this one. Again, great episode. I will see you guys next week. Well, at this point, this week, for episode 5. And until then, peace.